Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little discussion video on Psychopaths, Episode 10. Another knockout episode in this series, I have to say, and as far as just keeping me on the edge of my seat, keeping my eyes glued to the screen, and ramping up thoroughly my excitement for the next episode to follow. This one was definitely no exception in that regard, and we're basically beginning with Akane receiving a late-night text message or email from her friend, purportedly Yuki Funohara. This is setting up a meeting for them to take place the following day about 3 in the afternoon in a seedy side of town that, frankly, Yuki wouldn't be known to go to on her own. So very smartly, we see that Akane sides up with her enforcer subordinate Kagami to investigate, and I absolutely love the character dynamics between these two as the series is unfolding. You know, ever since her very first night on the job, going back to the very first episode, you had a Kagami who's really ambivalent about her even being there. He just wanted to do his job, and she tried to relate to him from the off, but she hasn't really found a way to. She doesn't know quite how to relate to him. And I love that as the series is unfolding, she's maneuvering the relationship between the both of them that much better with every step of the way. Now, of course, she has been friendlier with some of the other enforcers that she's, in command over, but she's still having that hard time with Kagami until in the last couple episodes, she became really enthralled with his criminal profiling capabilities and his investigative skills. And I just love the fact that we see Kagami sort of taken a shining to her since then. It's almost as though he's being more protective of her than anything else, not just because he sees her as his boss, but I think it's because he's having a sort of interest in her, not necessarily a romantic interest for either one of them, but I just think there's an admiration between the both of them. And as soon as they get on the scene, of course, because of the skill Kagami brings to the table, he knows something is amiss. He knows something's foul. He says it flat out, this is a trap. Somebody has marked you, Akane, to be taken down. And he basically takes command of the situation. While he leaves Akane back in the vehicle, he arms himself and he goes to investigate on his own. Now, they're communicating over this radio, and there's this whole influx of static when he reaches a point in this underground building that essentially goes off the map that she's looking at in the vehicle. And it's only after a few minutes of him still investigating, probing further down in this underground area, that the radio signal finally clears up again. And the thing is, I noticed right off the bat that Akane's voice sounded a little bit different this time around. I was surprised Kagami didn't pick up on it right away as well. Now, as it turns out, while Akane's still back in the vehicle freaking out because the signal's been lost, Kagami is still probing further in this underground tunnel, thinking he's still talking to her. And he goes and he finds this train. There's this flood of water, and the train starts taking off, and he's told to climb into it by who he thinks is Akane. When he does, sure enough, he finds Yuki Funohara herself stripped down to her underwear and tied to a chair. She freaks out when he basically reveals himself. I'm sure she has just the worst fears in her mind that this is going to be somebody who's going to rape and kill her or something like that. And Kagami figures it out almost immediately. You know what? They knew Akane wasn't going to come down here on her own. She was probably going to call me for help. She was probably going to send me down here. This was a trap set for me. And I was absolutely floored by this because it all called back to the last episode, Makishima, that sort of Moriarty nemesis to the Sherlock Holmes that Kagami is, as I've been referencing it in the last few episode reviews. He basically initiated this whole thing as a way to test Kagami. Essentially, it's a fox hunt with Makishima at the reins, using this guy, Senguji, who we saw in the last episode, who is highly cyberized, gets off on the idea of killing people. This is what he thinks rejuvenates him and so forth, making him just despicable and horrific as it is. And then Makishima is this master manipulator who's using both Kagami and Senguji against each other in this fox hunt, which is, again, to use that reference I made in the last episode review, a chess game of wits and death. This is just masterful storytelling as far as I'm concerned, because you have Kagami really sort of trudging along, figuring things out. They realize that there is this communication device that's broken up into bits and pieces, and he systematically led to each piece of this thing in each step of this fox hunt game. Now, the first one is a bag just laying out in the open. The second one is attached to one of these robotic or cybernetic dogs that Kagami has to effectively and masterfully take out in order to hold any hope that he and Yuki can get out of there. And then the third one happens to be placed in her bra, which is very meticulously crafted to basically try to drive a rift between them of distrust in this whole fox hunt front game. Now, as this whole thing is going on, you have the enforcers, Ginoza, everybody coming together to try to figure out what's going on, because now Kagame's missing, and Ginoza's first thought is, well, you know what, Akane, you're stupid, you let him go, he pulled this ruse so he could escape and get away, and if he ends up dead because of this, it's all your fault. And what totally shocked me, blew my mind, was the other enforcer, Tomome, who's been the nicest cat of all of them, the old gumshoe guy, to Akane, comes over, grabs Ginoza by his collar, lifts him off the ground, and throws him against the wall. He basically tells him, confrontationally as hell, you are being a jerk right now. You are going too far by accusing Akane and trying to make her feel so bad for this situation when you don't even know what's going on. And I absolutely was compelled by this. I was loving it because this just shows the approaches between Ginoza and Akane as far as being the enforcer's boss is very different. And it shows you just who they are going to be rooting for if they have to choose between the two. You have Ginoza being the guy who's treating them like dogs on a leash. They're only meant to serve a purpose, and that's it. If they go wrong, they're dead. You have Akane who's trying to relate to them, be one of them while also being the boss, and she's trying to get to know them. It's a very different dynamic and approach in as far as being that boss role, and you can see that Tomome is totally moved by the way Akane has been, to the point where he will physically get into an altercation with his boss, the higher up of both of them, if this boss is taking it out on Akane unfairly. And of course he is doing it unfairly because once Kagame is able to get those three pieces of that communication device put together, he breaks through the signal jamming and tells them, Code 108, I'm down here alone, we need help. And Ginoza puts everybody into action. You see the smiles and relief on the faces of Tomome and Akane and the other enforcers as they race down into the tunnels to try to find Kagame. And that is where we have this big-ass cliffhanger, which just has me ramped up. I'm so psyched out for the next episode. I'm loving this series. I hope more people will get to watching it. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you're watching Psycho Pass, what are you thinking of it? Did you love this episode as much as I did? If not, let me know in the comments below. And otherwise, that's going to be pretty much it for me on this one. So I will catch you later. Peace.